Hello there, and welcome to all of you who are watching this live. It's really great to have so many of you on here with us. And if you're watching this later on the replay, then hello to you as well. I'm David Miles, and I'm on a mission to help mortgage brokers and financial advisors to generate their own leads online so as they can stop giving money to lead generation companies. Now, there are lots of different online channels that you can use to generate leads and get new clients. And in today's session, we're going to be talking about one of those channels which seems to get a bit of a bad press, to be honest, amongst some mortgage brokers and other small business owners, and that is Google Ads, or as it used to be called until 2 or 3 years ago, Google AdWords. So you may know it by that name as well. So it'd be really useful just to get an idea of sort of where you're up to as an audience. If you could just leave a quick comment, just to say whether you currently use Google Ads or whether you've tried it in the past, and if you're not using it at the moment or you stopped using it, what was it that means that you don't use it? As we go along through this session, please do feel free to post any questions in the comments box. I'll do my best to sort of keep an eye on those as we go through, but I'll be honest, I'm not a great multitasker, so I might not see them all, but what I'll try and do is stop, pause halfway through and have a look at what's there. And if I do miss any of your questions, I will make sure I go through at the end after the session is over, and I'll answer any of them then as well. And obviously, if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to put a question in, and I'll answer that later on as well. So I can see a few of you commenting in there saying that you don't use it or have tried it in the past. So yeah, so what I'm going to do here in today's session is I'm going to talk about three things really. I'm going to give a quick overview first of all of how Google Ads actually works. Then I'm going to talk about what goes wrong with it, why it goes wrong for a lot of people, especially those in the mortgage sector and other areas of financial services. And then finally, the third part, I'm going to talk about how to set up a Google Ads campaign in the correct way so as it actually generates leads for you rather than losing you a load of money. Do stick around to the end because I'm going to be sharing some details of some free Google Ads training that you can get access to, and I've also got a special offer just for people who are on this Facebook Live today, so do hang around for that. Okay, so let's get started then with talking about Google Ads for mortgage lead generation. So we'll start with how Google Ads works. So the Google Ads are those adverts that appear at the top of the Google search results above the organic results. So you'll typically get a maximum of 4 of those adverts at the very top and up to 3 of them appearing at the bottom. And the way the system works is that the advertisers, i.e. you guys, if you're using it, you give Google a list of keywords. So things like mortgages, mortgage broker, mortgage advice, that kind of thing. Keywords which are relevant to the products or services that you are selling. And you say to Google, if someone types in a search term that matches one of these keywords, then I'd like my advert to appear. And it's what's called a PPC, a pay-per-click advertising system, because you don't pay for your advert actually to appear. You only pay if someone clicks on your ad and then goes through to your website. So how does Google decide which ads to show? Well, first of all, it has to look at the search term that the user enters into Google, and then it looks at all the advertisers it's got and decides whether the keywords they're bidding on are similar enough to the search term that's been entered to trigger their advert to appear. So, if one of your keywords is mortgage broker and someone types in, I'm looking for a mortgage broker, Google will look at that search term and say that's similar to the keyword mortgage broker, so it will potentially show your advert. The amount that you pay for each click is done on an auction system. So each advertiser tells Google how much they're willing to pay for each click. And it's a bit like an eBay auction in that that's then the maximum that you'll pay, but what you will actually pay is just enough to beat the next person in that auction. So if there are 2 mortgage brokers both bidding on the same keyword, then one of them might be bidding £2 a click, one will be bidding £1 a click, and the person with the higher bid, that's one of the things that will determine whether they appear in the results, and they will pay just enough to beat the next lowest bidder. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the basic gist of it. So the adverts themselves, you write your own ads, and you can have lots of different adverts. The advert is made up of 3 headlines along the top, and then 2 lines of description text. And what's really nice about the ads is that they are more prominent than the organic results. So they say they appear above the organic results. And over the years, Google has done more and more things to make the ads take up more space, because that's where they get their money from, is people clicking on the ads, and also to make them look less like adverts, so a lot of people don't even realize it's an ad they're clicking on rather than a natural search result. And actually that brings me on to a thing as well. A lot of people say they don't want to use Google ads because they themselves never click on them. Whether that's true or not, what I can tell you is loads and loads of people do click on the ads, and that's where Google make the bulk of their billions of pounds of profit per year, is from that. So even if you're not clicking on them yourselves, there definitely are people who are doing so. So that's an overview of what the system is. So how does it go wrong? Why are there so many people who say they've tried Google ads and they just spent a lot of money and got nothing back? Well, the part of the reason is because Google makes it very, very easy for pretty much anyone to come along and set up a Google Ads campaign. But they also make it very easy to do it the wrong way, because if you just go through the setup wizard and accept all the default settings, you're likely to set your campaign up in a way which will put more money into Google's pockets than it does into yours. Now, I'm sure they don't do that deliberately, because I'm not that cynical, but that's the way that it is. So the mistakes that people often make are, first of all, they choose the wrong keywords. And this is partly because the Google system is always suggesting additional keywords that you can add to your campaigns. But very often, the best campaigns have fewer keywords rather than loads and loads of them. So I'll give you an example. You see, if you were coming up with a list of keywords for a mortgage broker, your first instinct might be to think, okay, I'll bid on the keyword mortgages. But that's an example of a really, really broad keyword, which is not specific enough. It's like, if I said to you, you're looking to go on holiday, what you're going to type into Google, you might say cheap holidays as your first thing that comes into your head. But the people who type in cheap holidays, it's very unlikely that they're actually going to book at that point. They're probably what we call higher up the keyword funnel. So they are still doing their research, and it's only when they type in something more specific, like holidays in a particular hotel or in a particular place, that they're probably at the point of being ready to buy. And the same applies with mortgages and lots of other services. The more specific somebody is with their search term, the more likely they are to be a warm prospect who's ready to take action. So when you're choosing your keywords, you should look for more specific things, like, for example, mortgages for NHS staff would be a much better keyword than mortgages, because it's one that's not going to be being chased after by all your competitors. Because remember, this is an auction, and like any auction, the more people there are chasing the same thing, or the same keyword in this case, the more that's going to drive the price up. So think of those kind of less competitive, more niche keywords that other people won't be going after. You won't get so many searches for each of those, but if you have enough of them, you'll still get a decent search volume, and you'll pay less per click than you would for the really broad things. Now, the other thing linked to this in keywords is to think about choosing keywords which show what's called buyer intent. In other words, the keywords that are likely to be used by people who are showing some kind of intention to buy a product or service. So I had a really good example of this about 5 or 6 years ago. I was running a training course on Google Ads, and there were all sorts of different people in the room. And there was a guy there who ran a business that did commercial cleaning of like restaurant kitchens and things like that. And one of his keywords was kitchen steam cleaning, and another one of them was kitchen steam cleaning company. And the keyword that got by far the best results was the one that was kitchen steam cleaning company. And the reason for that is, if someone goes to Google and types in kitchen steam cleaning, they may want to hire a company to do it for them, or they may just be looking to download a fact sheet or something on how to do the job themselves. Whereas the person who searches for kitchen steam cleaning company, they clearly want to pay somebody to do it for them. So in a similar way, in the mortgage world, there's someone who types into Google, I don't know, mortgage for first time buyer, they are showing less intent to use a service like yours than someone who types in first time buyer mortgage advisor or mortgage broker. Because they've included mortgage advisor or mortgage broker in their search term, that shows they want the help of someone like you to get their mortgage. Whereas the person who just types in mortgages for first time buyers, they might want to talk to a broker, or they might be just looking to do the research themselves and and go and apply direct to the bank without an intermediary. So that's the first area where it goes wrong, is people not choosing the right kind of keywords. Then the other big mistake that people can make is to not understand something called keyword matching. Now, I said earlier on that when we were talking about how Google Ads works, that Google has to look at the search term that the user types in and look at the keywords that you're bidding on and decide whether the two are similar enough to make one of your ads appear. Now, a lot of people assume, but it works on an exact matching basis. So, if you're bidding on mortgage for first time buyer, your ad will only appear if someone types in mortgage for first time buyer. But the reality is that in the default settings, your ad will appear for anything which matches your keyword or which Google thinks is related to it. And the problem is that Google's definition of what's related to it is quite wide. So if you were bidding on mortgage for first time buyer, you could appear when someone types in mortgages for first time buyers with credit problems and no deposit, which clearly is not the kind of inquiry that you're going to be able to do anything with. It can even go broader than that. If potentially only one word has to match. So someone could type in mortgage for a business. You're bidding on mortgage for first time buyer, but because it's got the word mortgage in common, that can be enough to trigger the ad. So you really need to understand the different match types and make sure that you use those to restrict how wide Google casts its net in terms of who will see your ad. And if you have a look on my website, if you go to ppcmachine.co.uk/Google-ads, there are lots of different articles there about Google Ads, and one of them is specifically all about keyword matching, explains how it works, and it tells you which match types you ought to be using instead of using the default ones. The other area where people go wrong is they have badly written adverts. And what I mean by that is adverts which don't convey any benefits or any unique selling points. So think about what happens when you search for something. You're going to get someone gets a whole page of search results with these 3 or 4 adverts at the top. Why should they click your advert rather than someone else's? And the answer to that is they'll click your advert if your advert is the most appealing in terms of the benefits that it offers to that potential client. And very often people write ads which are very descriptive, very factual, and which don't really have anything that kind of entices people to actually click. And I'll talk about a couple of examples of that a bit later on. And the final main area where it can go wrong is that people don't have the right kind of landing pages. They don't send people to the right kind of page on their website that's going to maximize the chances of that visitor submitting an inquiry. I often say to people that in many ways the easy part of this thing is driving traffic to the site. The trickier part, and the bit where it gets more interesting, is how do you convince those site visitors to take action and to fill in an inquiry form or pick up the phone to you or whatever. So in terms of your landing page, you need to make sure that the page states very clearly what it is you do, what you offer, gives people reasons to stay around and make an inquiry or do whatever other action it is that you want them to do. And it should have simple to use inquiry form, clear phone numbers, all those kinds of things. If you don't get that kind of thing right, then it's a bit like running a massive advertising campaign to send people to a shop where the shelves are empty and there's rubbish all over the floor and all that kind of thing. You've got to get the website landing page sorted before you start spending money on advertising. So now we've talked about what can go wrong. Let's move on to how you actually create a Google Ads campaign that is going to work properly. Now, there are a couple of things that you should do before you even go anywhere near Google Ads itself. Oh, hang on, there's a question there from Lisa, which I'll just try and pick up before we launch into that. She says advisor or advisor, as in advisor with an E or advisor with an O. So I'm guessing, Lisa, you mean, should you, if you're using advisor as a keyword, should you bid on it with an ER or an OR? The answer is that because of the way Google's matching works, and because of the fact it has some flexibility and it will show keywords for things which are very close to what you're bidding on, then you could bid on, you could put your keyword in as advisor with an E, which is the more usual way of spelling it in the UK. But if someone did search for mortgage advisor with an O, then your advert would still appear. In terms of what you actually put in your advert itself, personally I'd go with advisor with an E, because I say that's the more usual British way of spelling it. But if all of your other literature and marketing and everything uses OR, then I'd probably go with that in the advert to be consistent. And Paul says, how much would you suggest spending on Google Ads? And that's a very open-ended question, obviously, Paul. But in terms of when you're starting off, you've got to spend enough to actually be able to give it a decent test, but clearly you don't want to go mad with it until you know you've got a formula that works. Now, my general rule of thumb for a mortgage broker starting off with Google Ads, I would say to try to budget between £500 and £1,000 in the first month to get the thing going. The problem if you do less than that is, say you only budget, let's say £200 for the month. You're not going to be able to get a huge number of clicks each day for that, because if you budget £200 for the month, Google will spread that budget out throughout the 30 days of the month, or 30.4 days if you want to be totally accurate about it. So you won't have very much budget available on any given day. And if you've only got a budget of like less than £10 a day, and you're bidding on keywords where maybe it costs £4 or £5 a click, you're not going to get much in the way of clicks, and you won't be able to give it a fair test. And also bear in mind, think what a typical mortgage earns you in terms of broker fees if you charge them, plus prop fees, plus any life insurance, etc. on the back of it. It's generally going to be an average of more than £500. So is it really fair? Is it really a fair test if you only invest £200 to test something which could potentially earn you, let's say £800 or £1,000? I think it's when you're in this kind of industry where one client can be worth quite a bit of money, you do need to be willing to, I would say, invest at least one client's worth of profit in that first month to give it a proper test. And then obviously once you know it's working, then you can scale it up. That's a good question, Paul. One to which there's not a short answer. Okay, so going back to creating a campaign. First thing to do before you even start creating your Google Ads campaign is I strongly advise you to choose a niche within the mortgage industry to focus on for your initial pilot project with Google Ads. And what I mean by that, it's like we were talking about just now, rather than just trying to go after anyone who's looking for a mortgage, go after specific niches. So, whether that's something like mortgages for NHS staff, like you mentioned before, or mortgages for teachers, or mortgages for IT contractors, or mortgages for self-builds. There's all kinds of different niches within the mortgage industry. Pick one of those and focus just on that, because again, if you are starting with a limited budget, it's much better to assign that budget to one particular niche and test it properly, rather than try and spread a small budget over loads and loads of different keywords, because you'll never get enough data for any of them to make any sensible decisions about what's working and what isn't. If you want more information on choosing niches and the benefits of having a niche within your marketing, then again, have a look on the website. Go to the blog and go to the page about mortgage broker marketing. There's a whole article there on niching. If you want to go really more into that, those of you who are doing my online course will know there's a whole section around choosing niches within module 1 of that. So choose a niche that you're going to focus on. Then the next thing is to get your landing page sorted out, because like we said just now, poor landing pages are one of the biggest causes of people losing money on Google Ads. So make sure that your landing page has a really clear value proposition, which will tell people when they land on your site where they are, what they can do there, and why they should stick around and do it. I often say to mortgage brokers that one of the biggest challenges you've got is that by and large, you're all selling the same products or services from the same lenders. So as a potential client, why should I choose to go to you for my mortgage rather than the other broker down the road? And a good value proposition will help answer that and will give me a reason why I should choose you rather than your competitor. Again, there's articles on the website about creating a value proposition, and there's sections in the online course on how to do that as well. But do put the effort into getting a good value proposition, and then make sure that that's displayed clearly on your landing page. Also, make sure that you clearly highlight your unique selling points. So for example, if you, I don't know, if you're a broker that doesn't charge a fee, make sure that's really prominent and highlighted on the page, because that will be something that differentiates you from other people. Have a really strong, clear call to action. So, if you want people to submit a quick inquiry form or request a callback, make sure that that stands out really prominently, either as a button that they click or an inquiry form embedded within the page that is really obvious. Keep the page simple as well. So what I would normally recommend is you keep your main website over here as it is, but you create a separate landing page that's not linked to the rest of your site, and you use that for your Google Ads traffic. And in actual fact, you make sure it has no menus on it and nothing like that. So there's no distractions. All people can do when they get there is read the information, submit the inquiry. That might sound counterintuitive, but most of the time that actually produces a greater number of leads and conversions than if you allow people to just stroll through the entire site and stroll out the end again. And the other thing I would recommend you have on your landing page, and I talked about this on the Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Facebook advertising. I think it's important with Google advertising as well that you have some kind of lead magnet on your landing page. So if people aren't ready to make an inquiry yet, have some useful, valuable resource like a PDF guide to buying a home, or something like that, which they can download in return for giving you their name and email address. Because once you've got that name and email address and got them on your mailing list, you can send them follow-up emails to keep you at the front of their mind, so as when they are ready to take the next step, it's you that they remember rather than someone else. And you can also use those emails to build up a bit of a relationship with them, build a bit of rapport, so they get to know, like, and trust you before you even have that first conversation with them. So once you've then done all that groundwork, now you can actually move on to creating the Google Ads campaign. And as I've touched on already, I would suggest you start off with a small campaign targeting a limited number of keywords. Okay, so based around whatever niche it is you've chosen. So if you had chosen first-time buyers as your niche, let's stick with that example. Just have keywords like first-time buyer mortgages, mortgages for first-time buyers, first-time buyer mortgage broker, those kinds of things, and keep the focus of those keywords really tight rather than trying to go off and cast the net too wide. Then you need to make sure that your ads are really well written. So like I said before, you need to have in your ads plenty of benefits and unique selling points. Now, those unique selling points could be things where it's something that you offer which other brokers don't. So fee-free advice might be a USP, but is something you do that other brokers don't. But a benefit or a USP doesn't have to be actually totally unique. It can just be that you're the only broker who mentions it in their ad, even though it's something that everybody offers. Or it can be around the way that you present the same benefit. So for example, I was looking on Google earlier on and searching for mortgage related terms, and I saw a couple of ads come up where they said that they were whole of market brokers. Now, my question there would be, does the average person in the street actually know what a whole of market broker is? And even if they do they know how big the market is? So is whole of market impressive or not? Because, for all I know, as a uneducated potential client, the market might only be 20 lenders or something like that. It's much better with these things if you can put a number behind it and quantify it. So I worked with one broker a couple of years ago where they weren't actually whole of market. They were restricted panel, and they had access to 50 odd lenders, I think it was. And so in their ads, we put things like choose from over 50 lenders or choice of 50 plus lenders. And that actually sounds more impressive than whole of market. because you're putting a number behind it. So even though 50 plus lenders isn't the whole of the market, it actually sounds better than the ads of the people who are saying whole of market. So think about how you present these things and think about how they look to your potential client, and don't assume that industry terms that you and I understand will necessarily have the same meaning to your potential clients. Now I said I'll share a couple of examples. So I looked at some adverts earlier on, and I just picked out a couple of examples, one of how not to do it and one of how to do it a lot better. So I did a search for, I think it was for first-time buyer mortgages or whole-of-market mortgage brokers, one or the other. And one of the ads that came up said it was for this. I don't know if you can see that there. This company here, Willow Private Finance. So apologies if anyone from Willow Private Finance is watching, but I am going to give you some definite tips on how to improve this. So the headline says Willow Private Finance, independent mortgage brokerage. And then the description says experts in specialist lending, finance and protection since 2008. In actual fact, I've just noticed there's a typo in it. It says experts in specialist, spelt wrongly, leading instead of lending, finance and protection since 2008. Call now, we can help you. Now, there's a few problems with that ad, apart from the typos and the spelling mistakes. Firstly, they've used the headline, which is the most prominent part of it, to put their company name in. And with the best will in the world, when someone's looking for a mortgage, they really don't give a damn what your company is called. Okay, they don't care what your brand name is. What they care about is, do you offer mortgages for doctors or first-time buyer mortgages or whatever it is they've searched for? So your headline should focus on the keywords that you're targeting, and hence the search terms that people have put in, rather than wasting space with something like your company name, which isn't going to add a lot of value to the advert. And then the other major issue with it is saying they're experts in these things. Well, we've only got their word for that. Where's the proof of it? If they could put something in to actually prove their expertise or explain how they help and the benefits of using them, that would be far more powerful. And call now, we can help you. Well, you haven't actually told me how you can help me. So the ad, if the ad was a good ad, it would make it clear how they could help me. And they wouldn't need to tell me to call, because I'd be wanting to call anyway, because the ad would have been so convincing. By contrast, we've got another one here. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that or not, but I will read it to you. So this one says, home mortgages, find the best deal for you. That's the headline. So straight away down the headline, we've got a benefit. Rather than telling me the name of their company and the fact they're a mortgage broker, they're saying that they will find the best deal for me. So they're making it about me, not about them, which is a really important thing to do. And then the description says, we search the entire market. So that's what they do. But then we come benefit, saving you time and money on your mortgage. So immediately there, we've got something where I've got a reason to talk to these people, because the outcome, the benefit I'm going to get is they're going to save me time and money on my mortgage. Apply now, get expert advice. So again, they're using the expert advice thing. Then let us take care of your entire application. So again, it's the benefit to me. Not only am I going to save time and money, but the implication is I'm going to save hassle as well, because they're going to take care of everything for me. And then there's just some bullet point benefits after that: low interest rates, easy remortgages, etc. So hopefully you can see there the kind of difference. But what I would say is, if before you start writing any ads, just run some Google searches yourself, not just for mortgages, but for other things that you might be thinking of buying, or other services, and just compare the ads. And hopefully you'll start to see that some ads jump off the page at you a bit more than others, and just try and analyze them and think, well, what is it in that ad that attracts me? And the answer will be, it's the benefits and the fact they're talking about you, the potential customer, rather than talking about them, the company or the supplier. Right, then the next thing, once you've got your ad, you need to set a sensible bid. This ties in with the stuff I was saying just now in answer to Paul's question. So don't get drawn into huge bidding wars, but equally be realistic about what you're going to bid per click. So if I say that a click might cost you an average of £5, a lot of the time people will say, oh, that's a huge amount of money. But actually, if you think about it, if a keyword was going to cost £5 per click to get a decent position, and Google will give you estimates of what you need to bid, that means that 100 clicks will cost you £500. Out of 100 clicks, it's not unreasonable to think that you'll get 10 inquiries. And out of 10 inquiries, it's not unreasonable to think that you'll get one completed case. So when you look like that, we're saying, £500 investment to get one completed case that could be worth £1,000. That's actually not bad. So don't be short-sighted with it. Look beyond the cost per click and think, actually, does this stack up based on my assumed conversion rates? So that's it in a nutshell. Obviously, there's more detail to it than I can cover in a half-hour slot, but I do have some things on the website that can help. I have a free Google Ads training course, which actually steps you through, it's an online video training course that steps you through how to set up your first simple Google Ads campaign. It's not mortgage specific, it's designed to apply to any small business, but it covers those same things I've gone through there. You can access that by going to theppcmachine.co.uk/free course, all one word. If you want to take things a step further, there's my full-blown paid-for online course, which covers all these things around niching, value propositions, creating landing pages, and then running the Google Ads. That's at theppcmachine.co.uk/course. And the special offer that I said I'd got for you guys is, if any of you have been, as hopefully you have been, inspired by this to go and try setting up your first Google Ads campaign, my offer to you is that set it up, but before you start running it, go to www.chat2david, that's the number 2, chat2david.com, book a call with me, and I will go through the campaign with you on a Zoom call and review it before you go live and tell you whether it's set up correctly or make suggestions for how you can improve it. Okay, so that's that way you should be able to try it without falling into any unpleasant traps. If there are any other questions, then do pop them into the chat now, or put them in once the session ends in a moment, and I'll come back and answer them afterwards. I hope you found that useful. I hope it's inspired you to give Google Ads a bit of a try. As I say, it sometimes gets a bad press from mortgage brokers, and they say, oh, we'll do Facebook ads instead because it's cheaper. But Google Ads tends to get you people who are more likely to convert because they're actively searching on Google for a mortgage or mortgage broker, rather than people on Facebook who are just seeing your ad in their feed, and you have to just hope that it piques their interest. So yeah, if you haven't given it a try before, please do, but also do take me up on that offer to book a call and let me look over it before you go live. Thank you very much for coming along. Thank you very much if you're watching it on the replay later on, and we'll aim to do another one of these in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks very much. Bye now.